أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه الأجمعين ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. My dear sisters in Islam, this is a continuation of our topic inside the house of the Prophet, and it's part 4. And in this part 4, we are going to talk about uh, how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with his wives. The Prophet ﷺ said, all of life is enjoyment, and the best enjoyment of life is a pious wife. This hadith, my dear sisters, is found in the book of Sahih al-Jami' al-Saghir. My dear sisters in faith, the Prophet ﷺ was the best in kindness and the great in dealings. We would notice that he used to call his wife Aisha radiallahu anha in her loveliest name and talk to her in loveliest way that made her heart and emotion fly. So the Prophet of this Ummah sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave us the good example in good relationship and calmness and in searching for things which makes a wife happy, letting his wife feel that she is the nearest to his heart. Aisha radiallahu anha said, I was drinking while I was menstruating, and I gave the goblet to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He puts his mouth on the same place of my mouth. I was also eating a meat on the bone, and he, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, put his mouth to the same place of me. This hadith, my dear sisters, was reported by Imam Muslim. So, my dear sisters in faith, we'll find that in many situations, the Prophet ﷺ classified the status of women, that they have importance and great status. He, the Prophet ﷺ, also answered the question of Amr ibn al-As, the Sahaba Amr ibn al-As, informing him that love for wife is not shame on the right and pious man. Narrated by Amr ibn al-As that he said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is the nearest one to your heart? He replied, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam replied, Aisha radiallahu anha. This hadith is agreed upon. For that reason, my dear sisters in Islam, whoever seeks for marital happiness, he should consider the saying of Aisha radiallahu anha on how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam dealt with her. Aisha radiallahu anha said, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and I used to take a bath from a single pot. This hadith, my dear sisters in Islam, is reported by Imam Bukhari. So, my dear sisters in faith, the Prophet ﷺ did not left any chance to make his wife happy in a right and permissible way. Aisha radiallahu anha said, I traveled with the Prophet ﷺ while I was young and I was not fat yet. He told the people, the Prophet ﷺ told the people, go forward. So they did. The Prophet ﷺ said to Aisha radiallahu anha, let's race. So I won the race. Aisha said, I won the race. Later, I traveled with him again, and he visited me to compete, or invited me to compete with him after I became fat. Later, I traveled with him again, who the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this Aisha saying, later I traveled with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam again, and he invited me to compete with him after I became fat. He asked the people to go forward. Then I raced him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I raced with Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam again, but he, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, won. He laughed and said, 1 for 1. This hadith, my dear sisters, is reported by Imam Ahmad. Shukran jazila.